We are less than 2 weeks away from lots of people's favorite holiday, that of course being Thanksgiving, but it also means the busiest travel times and days of the year are on the way. We have almost 80 million Americans, you'll remember last year, that traveled at least 50 miles from home. And Mother Nature is adding in some obstacles as usual, right? We want to check in with senior aviation reporter Sean Cudahy joins us now. Sean, great to see you as always. Want to jump right on into it. As you know, Sean, the government shutdown caused thousands of flight delays and cancellations across the country over the past couple of weeks. The government, thank goodness, hallelujah, has finally reopened. Tell me about whether or not there are still going to be lagging impacts from that as we head toward the busiest travel holiday of the year.
I think the lagging impacts are really going to be pretty minimal at this point. In fact, even far less, I would say, than we were thinking a few days ago. As of this weekend, the FAA technically is still requiring airlines to cancel about 3% of flights at 40 of the largest airports across the country. Remember, they were at 6% just a few days ago, so it's definitely an improvement. I will tell you, checking FlightAware and looking at the big airports, we are not even seeing 3% of flights canceled. It's more like 1 or 2% at a lot of these airports. So, things are definitely looking to be back on track. Remember, last weekend we were in the middle of chaos at airports. We were dealing with mass air traffic control staffing problems. Those have really, really alleviated. I don't think that anybody's going to sit here and tell you we're going to have a perfect Thanksgiving. As you all know well, Mother Nature could definitely have a say in that. But, as we sit here today, I am way more confident about a smooth sailing Thanksgiving than I was just a few days ago.
Sean, listen, you are making my day every time we talk with you. So what you're telling me is the 23rd and 24th, that's going to be next Sunday and next Monday, huge travel days. It doesn't look like the government's shutdown and any of the residual impacts doesn't seem like that's going to be a problem from what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I think there's obviously some larger air traffic control staffing problems that can really kind of come to a head, especially if there's like a bad weather system that makes its way up the East Coast. But I think as the week went on, we became increasingly optimistic about the ability of kind of the whole air travel system, from the airlines to the air traffic control to even the TSA officers who worked without pay for weeks.
Yeah.
Things are really as I just kind of look around the whole system this weekend. I'm very encouraged by where things sit here today.
Oh man, same here. All right, Sean, you mentioned the fact that weather can have a huge impact on aviation. Just last week, what was it, like millions, hundreds of millions of us fighting through that polar vortex. Did the polar vortex and just that extreme cold that came with the de-icing, etc., did that have any impacts on travel?
I think that what we saw last weekend was kind of the combination of a lot of different things. So you had the obviously a major kind of unprecedented almost air traffic control staffing disruptions. And then you had sort of a combination of different factors. We had the lake effect snow system, obviously, that made its way through the Great Lakes region. We had a storm system that made its way through Atlanta, the busiest airport in the world. And I think you kind of put all of that together, and that really formed the mass, I guess we would call it chaos that we saw at airports across the country last weekend. As we head into Thanksgiving, I think that anytime that you have a major weather system that hits the Northeast or that hits a big hub like Chicago or Denver, that can create problems. But airlines are pretty accustomed to going through the process of de-icing planes, dealing with the cold weather. Even Southwest Airlines, remember a couple of years ago, they had that big meltdown over the winter holidays, and part of that was caused by kind of a lack of sufficient equipment to deal with de-icing and snow on the ground. They're much better on that front too. So I think that airlines are going to be pretty well equipped heading into the holidays.
All right, Sean, last question. I'm actually going to be flying to LA in about a weekish or so. LAX, as you know, last year handled over 76 million passengers. We're on the heels of a huge travel weekend, and we also have our atmospheric river in play on the West Coast. How do you think that could impact travel on, in the busiest airport on the West Coast?
I think that it kind of depends on what the impact will be for ground crews and air traffic control. If you have dense fog that comes in, low cloud ceiling, sometimes that can cause air traffic control to have to reduce arrival rates, which can lead to cascading delays. The good thing is, when we're dealing with significant rain events, unless it's like really torrential, they are able to keep planes typically taking off and landing. Sometimes you might have to see kind of the rate of planes taking off and landing slowed a little bit, which generally will lead, I would say, more to delays than cancellations. But I think I think still, I compared to at least where we were sitting a few days ago, I think the outlook looking into Thanksgiving is pretty optimistic at this point.
Sean, my stress level before talking with you with upcoming travel was up here. I'm confident in letting you know that right now you have helped to lower my stress and anxiety. Thank you so much for it, because it looks like at least next week, even when we take into account the polar vortex that we're forecasting, the residual effects, of course, of the government shutdown, and then, as we mentioned, of our atmospheric river, doesn't look like that's going to have a huge impact on travel as of this point. Listen, reporter and aviation expert, thank you so much, Sean Cudahy, for joining us this morning. We so appreciate it.
Thank you. Anything I can do to bring the stress level down.
Absolutely.